Good day everyone, especially to Ma'am Joreen. I am Christopher Pajac, BTLEd-HE2 economics student. Our topic is all about the introduction to metalworking part 2 that will mostly focus on the metal properties, welding safety, and welding symbols. But before anything else, let's start with the terminologies and metalworking, which is my topic for today. So the first one is an alloy. Alloy. When you're going to react metal together or when you are going to mix metal together, it is called alloy. For better understanding, let me give you an example. During the Stone Age, axes began to be made of pure copper, but they were barely soft. But when a small amount of tin added to make bronze, you get an axe which is twice as hard and work well. Another well-known example of an alloy is a brass. It is composed of copper and zinc. There are so many different types of alloy, and they have a wide variety of application. They are found in items like coins, metals, and statues. They are used in making electrical wirings and drinking mugs. Aluminum is used in a huge variety of products including cans, foils, kitchen utensils, and window frames. This is because of its particular properties. It has a low density, non-toxic, and has a high thermal conductivity, and it can be easily cast, machined, and formed. It is also non-magnetic and non-sparking. It is the second most malleable metal and the sixth most ductile. Aluminum is a good electrical conductor and is often used in electrical transmission lines. It is cheaper than copper, and for weight, it is almost twice as good as conductor. Brass is a copper alloy that consists mainly of copper and the main alloying element, zinc. Brass can have a varying color, ranging from red to yellow, and have different properties depending on the amount of zinc or other elements that are added. Brass is commonly used for decorative purposes due to its resemblance to gold. It is also used to make various musical instruments like trumpets, mainly due to its high workability and density. Bronze is a copper alloy which is the main element being tin and contains various other elements such as phosphorus, aluminum, manganese, and much more. Bronze can be identified by its dull gold color but also has faint rings on its surface, which is a result of being centrifugal casted. Bronze is primarily used for sculptures, metals, and industrial application. Carbon. It is used for fuel in the form of coal, methane gas, and crude oil. It is used to make all sorts of materials including plastics and alloys such as steel. It is even used to make black ink for printers and painting. But let's focus more on carbon and its properties. We have here carbon steel. This is basically a mixture of alloy composed completely of iron. So carbon steel has 2.06% carbon and 1.65% manganese as well as other couple of impurities. So we can safely say that carbon steel is made up of 98% iron. The amount of carbon is what determines the strength and ductility of the carbon steel. If you have a small amount of carbon, this would be the most ductile of carbon steel because it has a small amount of carbon. Therefore, the higher carbon content, the harder the material becomes, but the less ductile it becomes. When we say ductile, it is the stickiness of the material. An example of a material that has less carbon are nails, pipe, and wires. They are more ductile, but it is not that hard. And an example of materials that has higher carbon are milling cutters and springs. These materials has less iron and has more carbon. That makes them a hard material. The amount of carbon decides the strength of the material. Actually, I want first to discuss the hot rolled before the cold rolled for better understanding. So, the hot rolled steel is a steel that has been rolled pressed at a very high temperature which is above the recrystallization temperature for most steel. This makes the steel easier to form and resulting in a product that are easier to work with. It requires much less processing than cold rolled steel, which makes it a lot cheaper. and hot rolled steel is allowed to cool at room temperature. To determine that it is a hot rolled steel, it has a scaly surface finish, rounded edges on a bar stock, and non-oily surface. Cold rolled. Cold rolled steel is essentially hot rolled steel that has been processed further. Once hot rolled steel is cold, it is then re-rolled at room temperature to achieve more exact dimension and better surface qualities. Other cold finishing processes include turning, grinding, and polishing, each of which is used to modify existing hot roll stock into more refined products. Due to additional processing for cold finished products, they become at higher prices. In terms of physical characteristics, cold-rolled steel are typically harder and stronger than standard hot-rolled steel. While hot-rolled steel is heated then cold, cold-rolled steel is heated and cold at room temperature and followed by annealing or tempers rolling. This additional process allows a higher wider range of finishes and closer dimensional tolerances. Three ways to identify cold-rolled steel are oily or greasy, a very smooth surface, a very sharp edges on a bar stock. Cold-rolled steel is commonly used for machine parts, automotive components, and much more. Fun fact about copper. Red metals is a term that refers to copper, brass, and bronze. These metals are called red metals because they all derive from copper. Basically, the copper stands as the mother of brass and bronze. However, despite of its similarity, they are actually quite different. Copper, along with having good strength and formability, copper is an excellent electrical and thermal conductor. Copper has two other important attributes. It is corrosion resistant. Copper has found to kill more than 99.9% of bacteria within 2 hours of contact. Copper is the most commonly used in applications such as wires, electrical motors, and pots and pans. Ductile. The term ductility is the capacity of a material to deform permanently, that is stretched, bent, or it can be spread in response to stress. And therefore, we can say that it fractures easily. When a material specimen is stressed, then it plastically deforms. We can see elasticity at first that is above a certain deformation, which is known as the elastic limit of the deformation becomes permanent. These materials are easily deformed when they are put under tensile stress, and these materials are considered to be ductile. Element. It is a substance that cannot be broken down. There are 118 elements in the periodic table. Some of these are gold, silver, carbon, phosphorus, and a lot more. And every element has its atomic number. Ferrous. Ferrous metals contain iron. Mostly it is consists of iron and a small amount of other elements. These metals are magnetic. It can be picked up by a magnet. This kind of characteristic of ferrous is due to the iron in it. Ferrous metals came to existence around 1200 BC when iron production became more common in the Iron Age. These metals possess tensile strength and durability, but are also vulnerable to rust. Mostly, it is prone to rusting, specifically if it is exposed to moisture. Most ferrous metals are also magnetic, making them useful in motor and electric appliances. Fusible. The term fusible metals or fusible alloys denotes a group of alloys that have melting points. Most of these substances are mixtures of metals that by themselves have low melting points, such as tin, bismuth, and lead. Fusible alloy is a metal alloy that is capable of being easily fused, easily meltable, at relatively low temperatures. Sometimes the term fusible alloy is used to describe alloys with a melting point below 183 degrees Celsius. Fusible alloys in this sense are used for solder. Gold. This makes it one of the higher atomic number elements that occur naturally. It is a bright, slightly orange-yellow, dense, soft, malleable, and ductile metal in a pure form. Gold is the most malleable of all metals. Gold is one of the least reactive elements in the periodic table. It doesn't react with oxygen, so it never rusts or corrodes. Gold is unaffected by air, water, alkalis, and all acid except aqua regia. Hardness. It determines the ability of a certain metal to be intact or kung gaano katigas ang isang metal. Iron. This substance has a symbol Fe and has the atomic number 26, and it is the most common element on Earth by mass. This element is the fourth most abundant on Earth's surface, and it can be easily found in quarries and mines. It oxidizes when it comes into contact with oxygen, so we rarely see it in a pure form. It is also brittle and hard substance. Nowadays, we tend to use iron to create steel, often used in manufacturing and civil engineering. Stainless steel, which is highly resistant to corrosion, it's commonly used in kitchen cutlery, appliances, and cookware. It is also used for hospital equipment. Lead. Lead is a bluish-white lustrous metal. It is very soft, highly malleable, and ductile, and it is relatively poor conductor of electricity. It is very resistant to corrosion but tarnishes upon exposure to air. And that ends the report of mine, and Ms. Shilamir Binasio will continue the report. This has been Christopher Pajac, your reporter for today.